Hi, this is Joe from the Ventura Fire Foundation. These are 2 episodes that will be difficult to listen to. Some of the tough topics include domestic violence and suicide. We think it's important to get these stories out to reduce the stigma of seeking help and to raise awareness of mental health issues in the fire service. Our guest, Heather Ellis, was both a firefighter and a firefighter's spouse. We appreciate her incredible courage in telling her story. The conversation covers 2 episodes of the podcast. Please listen to both to get the full picture. If you or someone you care about is a victim of domestic violence, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline by texting START to 88788. That's START to 88788. And if you or someone you care about is in crisis, please call or text the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 988. Thank you for listening.
Welcome to the Firehouse Roundtable podcast, brought to you by the Ventura Fire Foundation. I'm one of your hosts, Peter McKenzie, retired fire captain with the City of Ventura Fire Department, and my co-host, Jason Kay, active battalion chief with the City of Ventura Fire Department. We are going to bring awareness to real issues that face firefighters and their families. We want you to feel like you have a seat at the kitchen table, which every firefighter knows is the heart of the firehouse. Let's get right into the episode. So, yeah, what happens next? I mean, talk about the other foot dropping.
So, unfortunately, there were always repercussions for not taking the steps that we need to. Eventually, those things catch up with us. Where my husband was concerned, he didn't acknowledge he had a problem. He had an overdose incident. He went to the hospital, but he didn't acknowledge he had a problem. When there was an issue in the home and he hurt someone, it was somehow that person's fault. He lost his paramedic license. He did not report his arrest to the licensing board for his nursing license. Hope.
She's mad. She's mad about this.
Yes.
Yep.
Hope.
I like it.
And he was caught. Through a renewal process, he got caught. He got notified that they were aware he had a felony arrest, and it was not reported, and they were revoking his license. Of course, I got a phone call. It was my fault he lost his paramedic license. It was my fault he lost his nursing license. We weren't even supposed to be talking on the phone. I tried to explain to him that, again, these are issues that you could have mitigated. I did not do this to you. About 5 o'clock the next morning, the saddest thing is I woke up to screams from my middle daughter, where someone called her to tell her that her dad had killed himself. They didn't call me. They called one of my children.
Wow. That's how you heard?
Was that the child that he was still allowed to visit?
Yep.
Is that how they got a phone
Yep.
call?
So upset.
So it was literally
That morning. So he called me the night before.
That morning.
And about 5 o'clock in the morning is when my daughter Mackenzie got there.
What did that recovery process look like? I would imagine years.
She still struggles. I mean, the whole thing, just unfortunately, just getting that phone call, the way she was told, none of it was appropriate. None of it was right. No kid needs to hear that way. No kid does. That phone call should have come to me. As much as everything was not good, out of respect for my kids, we took care of his necessary funeral arrangements because I can't let that hang on over their heads. as did he had a previous ex-wife as well. So, and he had 2 children from that marriage as well. And so both of us took care of those things to ensure that the kids weren't burdened by that. It's just very unfortunate. And we continue to heal. And there are still things I can look at my kids today and some of the decisions that they make. I know why they make them. I can try to talk to them about it, but I know why they make them. Some are good. Some, no, maybe not. I think they're from lessons learned, and they do a good job trying to protect themselves. I get it. I understand it. I appreciate it. But ultimately, we are all, I believe, healthy. We're strong. Like I said, I have anxiety. I deal with it. I have to.
I know that you are an incredibly strong person, and that's obviously a horrible thing for you and your children and everyone to go through. How did you lead your family out of that? Because I know you did, and I know you overcame that. What did that look like? I can't even imagine what that would be like. What if you're open to sharing?
I am. So, as crazy as this sounds, my best friend had already walked this journey. Her husband had also been a firefighter paramedic. Her children were much younger. They were 7 and 5. He, too, had been terminated from his job as a firefighter paramedic after periods of escalation, and he made a horrible decision at work. He, too, committed suicide. And I was fortunate that I had somebody to help to some degree with communicating with the kids. Even though hers were much younger, it doesn't matter. Kids are kids. They're still processing grief. Some of the things just that you still have to mitigate, even for months. And we hadn't been married. Actually, it's probably well over a year, mitigating paperwork legally. And then so many things that he had attached to my one daughter's name, mitigating that legally. And every time something came, it pulled a scab off. So you think, okay, making progress with this kiddo or with this situation, and then something comes in the mail or a phone call comes, and now we're processing a new stage of grief again. And oftentimes for one of them, that was frustration and anger and the whys. And for another one, it is the I don't care, because their relationship was very unresolved, as well as really the other one was as well. And when I say I don't care, it was because there's still a lot of anger to some degree about things that had happened. So working to get them to a healthier place definitely took time.
So why is it that, well, first of all, let me ask you, maybe I missed this. How long ago did that happen?
14 years ago.
Okay. So did it take you a while and some therapy and some time to build up that resiliency to then not walk around, number one, as a victim? Did you ever feel that way? And then number two, kind of be able to pick your head up and figure out how to get through that next stage of life and bring your kids up to that point?
The one thing I will definitely say is that I have refused to ever consider myself to be a victim. I own my decisions. I know why I did them. Don't know that they were the right ones. I choose to say I was a protector. So from that perspective, I would like to say I've always held my head up, and I've held it high. Definitely took some time for myself before I was willing to engage in considering another relationship, trying to identify what I can permit, what I am looking for, who I need to be, how do I ensure that I can go into a relationship healthy. My kids can be funny, because my husband, he would laugh because he's a hillbilly, but God knows he takes incredibly good care of me. He is a caretaker, and that's what I needed, because I am a fixer. I needed somebody to take care of me for a change. And that's something that he does for me. So in that self-reflection period, before willing to engage in dating or looking at what that was like, that was an important component for me. And so I was really fortunate in that aspect that goodness knows, I don't have to stress about a whole lot because he takes on a lot of those burdens at home. So he just lets me stress about work. And there's plenty of that.
So because I want to move back, I want to move on to the happier parts of your story. But before we do that, what's one piece of advice if somebody's in a relationship, maybe not as extreme as the one you were in, or maybe it is, like what would you tell yourself if you could go back in time and do some things differently? What advice can you give?
If I could go back in time, for sure, I think that I would have to believe and trust more in the system, and I would have removed myself from that situation much sooner. And I would have trusted as the firefighter, I would have trusted more probably in my fire family, in the sense that they would have rallied around me to ensure myself and my kids were protected no matter where we were. One. But for the fire family and the opposite side, being the spouse in that situation, again, trust the system, ask for help, utilize the resources available, whatever access points that you have, like TCTEI, make those phone calls, use any access points, physicians, advocate for well care for your spouse, ensure that, they're not suffering issues like sleep apnea and things like that, which might make them feel tremendously better. I think those are all touchstones that need to be relied upon. But most importantly, if there's a risk for domestic violence, and just a risk because things are escalating, nothing's happened, if nothing else, have a safety plan. And a safety plan always has to include always having your keys on you and being able to leave quickly. And if things are reaching that point, again, it's time to start making those calls to get our loved ones the help that they really need.
Gotcha. So don't isolate yourself and ask for help.
Absolutely. I should have trusted more, for sure, in hindsight. But again, I'm a fixer, and some things just can't be fixed by themselves.
That's the hard part for firefighters in general. We do the fixing. We don't get fixed, which is terrible, which we need to change.
Correct.
I'll be honest with you. I'm having a hard time as I think of questions and things to talk to you about. I have a hard time separating my brain between asking you the firefighter side of this stuff and asking you the spouse side of this stuff. Because a lot of times I'll say something, I'm thinking something like, well, as a spouse, what should you do, or what can you see in your firefighter that was an early sign of maybe some kind of a domestic violence side? And I would like you to answer that. So before it got to violence, what is it maybe that we can have spouses kind of a warning sign? But then at the same time, my brain goes, well, she walked in as a firefighter also. So what is it that as a firefighter that you should be recognizing in yourself to get help early too? Because as much as this is about your story is both sides of that coin too.
I would definitely say early signs are when they start throwing things. They're starting to release some pent up rage that they're having trouble controlling. When they start hitting inanimate objects, the wall, the table, when they're starting that need to release that energy somewhere, eventually it's going to be displaced physically to another person, whoever it is. And I think that is that piece that it's not going to take much more to escalate it to a place it's never been before. And that is probably the biggest warning sign that a spouse needs to realize, that our cup is full. It's full. And even if we've been married for 20 years and we've never seen this before, but suddenly he just put a hole through the wall Well, the cup's full, and that energy's got to be displaced, and we don't want it to be displaced on you physically. And I would hope that wouldn't happen, but it can happen. And again, they're displacing that energy. It's got to go somewhere.
That's a good tip. I like that. Something to look out for early on. As a firefighter, I know that you've had some of those sleepless, restless nights too, and coming home. Did you see any of that where you thought, because, like I said, I'm thinking of both sides. Did you see any of that in yourself where you go, okay, I would never get to that level. I would never let myself get there, but I could understand the frustration, and now I need to talk myself or get some self-care? Or did you feel any of that for yourself too, to where you go, okay, this is that, what's the right word?
Oh,
frustration building. And now I need to take myself out. I need to take some self-care time, like you originally opened this up with.
for certain, especially being the person coming off shift. I didn't get that sleep relief. I'm coming home initially to little ones, and so they're up. We literally had a grandparent who was doing the relief swap for us. And then we would be going, I'm coming home, getting them breakfast, and they're off to the races for the day. They want to play, and they're up. So exhaustion, fatigue certainly was a big issue for me. Self-care was pretty much, I feel like, non-existent early on for me. I will say my kids, they learned, they were pretty sweet. I would take cat naps on the couch, and they knew that they couldn't leave the living room unless they asked. And they, Mommy, want to go get toy upstairs? Tell me when you come back down. And God knows they did. They were angels if I'd had a rough night, because my time on task, even though our call volume certainly wouldn't be comparable to what the call volume is for Ventura now, but our time on task probably longer at the time than related to the current call volume, just because of the location of hospitals if we were doing transport. So, it'd be 45 minutes to an hour to the hospital and back, and you get 4 of those calls at night, you're done for. It's a rough night. So yeah, it wasn't good, but I think I look back and I definitely know I could have been a better parent, because fatigue definitely played into that. And but I don't feel like too many calls really bogged me down, but I also feel very fortunate that I was taught to really clinically look at in particular medical calls, trauma calls, from an early age, from when my dad was a deputy coroner. And whether good or bad, that's where my brain takes most of those. I'm no different than anybody else. When you have babies at home and you go on a baby call, the first thing you want to do is hug your babies. So I'm no different. And I had a few calls that when you're in your hometown and you can go immediately by your house and hug your babies, that's exactly what you do. You go hug your babies. But I don't think from a call perspective, and I've been on some wicked calls, that's really what really brought me down. But the fatigue factor, for sure.
And I think just the recognition that it's okay that you're fatigued and now you have to deal with that. That's, I think we talked about this a little bit, but part of that, this is the job we chose. You're going to be fatigued. So let's talk about how we deal with that on our days off, and getting days off, and having, taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Thanks for listening. This is Joe from Ventura Fire Foundation. We have an exciting lineup of free webinars for firefighter families in 2024. In June, Dr. Rachel Zemlock, a psychologist and firewife, will provide advice for families coping with disaster response when the firefighter is away for long chunks of time. The webinars are open to fire families throughout the U.S. and will be held on Zoom. There are limited seats available though, so register soon. You can register on our website or through the link in the show notes. All of the webinars will be recorded and made available on our website and YouTube channel. Support from Vanguard Charitable made this series possible, and we thank them. Now back to the show.
So what does life look like now? How did you get from Indiana to Ventura? And obviously that's a dark past that you had, and I'm glad you came through it and your kids did. And what's life look now for you?
Well, I felt I had accomplished a lot where I was. I had reached the point our paramedic program was accredited. We had a super high pass rate on first attempt. And my boss had moved into a new position at the hospital. I kind of felt like it was time for change. So I was just out there looking one day going, who could use somebody that was a nurse and a paramedic? Anybody? My husband said, well, why don't you look at coastal communities? And I interviewed for a position to run county EMS up in NorCal and a college in Virginia, and then this position here. I was actually late to the interview here, believe it or not, by hours. My flight got delayed. I actually called Chief Brock from the airport and told him that I was just going to catch the flight back out of Houston because I was late for my interview, and you're never late to a fire department interview, and I was sorry, and I didn't want to waste his time. And he said, no, we'll wait for you. And I'm like, I have no idea when I'm going to get there. I have no idea. Like, I really don't know. I am stuck in the Houston airport. And he goes, well, wait. Okay. And I'm like going, I have to be at work tomorrow because I'm in charge of running EMS and safety for the fair tomorrow. Okay. All right. I can do this. And so they finally got me on a flight. I got here. I got myself a rental car and jammed up here from LAX. Never been to California in my entire life. And they were shocked at how fast I got here. We don't talk about how we drive. We just drive. And we probably sat in the conference room for about 2.5 hours, just chatting about anything and everything. I missed my flight home. I had to drive back to LAX and hit every airline counter until I managed to book myself a flight home. Got home about 1:30 in the morning so I could work the next morning. And just waited to see what happened, and I got a job offer, and you guys are now stuck with me here at Ventura City. I've been here for 8 years now.
Okay, I have a question I want to ask you. I've been meaning to ask you this for a while. So, first off, it was a huge addition, you coming here, and you have this unbelievable, warm, maternal personality. Like, I'm going to wrap my arms around you and we're going to get through this no matter what it is. Like, just for our listeners who don't know Heather, that's Heather. That's like what she does. Like, you want her to show up when it hits the fan. Heather gets there. She's going to whip people into shape. She's going to get stuff done for you. And that's an amazing quality. I picture you, and hopefully this doesn't come out the wrong way, which I have been known to do in the past. But I picture you as like this mama bear who's like, cares about her cubs like intensely and will do whatever the heck needs to be done to make it happen, regardless of what the rules are or who's putting some boundaries around you or your position. So my question for you is that intentional, or is that just who you are? Like, because you do it masterfully, and I think it's amazing what you do. And I'm curious, like, do you try to do that, or are you just being yourself?
Myself. So I am. Got to get the job done.
That's what I thought.
Y'all are my boys. Literally, the grandkids know, like, all I have to do is say, I'm going to take care of my boys. And they know that's literally, I'm going to work and y'all are my boys.
I know I've been gone for going on 3 years now. I would still call you if something really bad happened and I needed somebody. You would be one of the people I call for sure. Other unrelated question to your past specifically, but you're in a unique position because you're you're in the administrative office. You see work comp cases. I'm sure you're involved in PTSD cases and the things that kind of the ugly side of the things we're talking about, all the issues. Where do you think we're getting it wrong? Where do you think we need to do better not Ventura City Fire, but the fire service in general? Like, what are we missing? I mean, you have a unique perspective. You see it, I would assume, on a daily basis. What's the next step? What do we got to do better?
I think that in part of it is about the upfront messaging, maybe. I look at it in hindsight now and go, I was taught really good coping skills. And I go, what are we giving students in regards to, these are the things you're going to see. Let's give you some tools on how to process this. New employees, these are some things you're going to see. Let's give you some tools on how you're going to process this. I think that is one part that we are definitely missing. The other thing, again, goes back to that wellness component of we need to ensure that they are taking advantages of the resources that we're giving them, the tools, hey, you scored this on your sleep apnea assessment. I'm gonna, unfortunately, I don't get that information, but if the vendor's coming to you and going, you really need to follow up on this, they can't make you follow up on it. But the employer needs to be better. So for me, I need to be better about messaging the importance of why the vendor is pushing this issue, because this is how it's affecting your health. And then as the vendor is making those contacts, hopefully the employee is taking that opportunity and saying, okay, I need to go speak with my physician about this, because it's part of my needed self-care to ensure my overall health and well-being. So I'm here for my family. I think that those are some of the pieces that we're probably still not getting right. We're starting to do better about those tools, but I don't think we have the messaging quite straight yet. And I need to do better here with those pieces. We're just now our second year into the physical process with the new vendor and doing the NFPA compliant physical. So now I need to really make sure they understand the why behind all the pieces. So when the vendor says XYZ, this is the importance behind it, because you have some self-care pieces that you need to take care of. I think that's part of it. But I really think a big piece is making sure the guys understand the resources, the importance of self-care, the importance of sleep, and the importance of the clinical processing and coping of the calls that they're going to see.
Gotcha. I think that's good advice. Where are the firemen getting it wrong? What if you had a magic wand and you could go, hey, don't do this anymore, or do this, because honestly, like we were talking earlier, you can lead the horse to water. You can't force them to drink. There is some culpability on the backs of the people who are doing the work, who are suffering from this. Where are they getting it wrong?
Not prioritizing sleep. 2, the resources are available, and they've been available for quite some time, really, in one shape, form, or another. We have to be willing to pick up the phone, and that's hard. That is really hard. But when we have that problem, I think picking up the phone, again, it's no different than the guy who has an issue with drinking and saying, I got to stop. It's taking that first step, saying that I can't sleep because all I see are these terrible calls that I've been on. Every time I close my eyes, I need to talk to somebody, and picking up the phone to do it. Again, for most, that's an issue of pride sometimes, I think. It's an issue of weakness, and people have an issue with this because we're firefighters. We don't have that problem. I don't have that problem. I don't need help with that. I'm good. I'm strong. I'm good. But are you?
This rings so true from the recently I listened to the Nick Hanna podcast, and that was one where I'm hoping guys can be courageous like he was and be able to say, something's wrong. I'm going to figure this out. I'm not just going to not say anything. I'm not going to just hide. I got to figure this out. I'm going to keep going until I figure this out. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Agree. Are you okay? Maybe not.
I think there's probably more guys that aren't okay than we know of, which is a shame. Like I feel like we need to be more honest, or not. That's not like they're being dishonest. They just need to be. There shouldn't be a stigma. We should get rid of the stigma. And the other thing I feel pretty strongly about is we need to empower the spouses to force this stuff on their spouse when they're in trouble. I mean, it sounds bad, but like they know. It's not like they don't know. We need to make it really easy for them to drop a dime and make something happen against the fireman's will, probably most of the time. But I feel like it's too critical. There's too much on the line. You got kids, you got family.
So I'm going to get on my high horse for just a second here and agree with Heather. There are resources out there. I get frustrated when I hear about guys struggling and not going to resources that are out there and saying, whether they want to do it in front of people or not. We have the foundation is there to help you financially, to help you find the people that you need. The peer support team has a CTI contract for free. Whatever you need, let's take care of each other. And when you see something in somebody else, where there's some culpability on ourselves, like we talked about earlier, Pete, to make sure and let somebody, either that person or their spouse or their supervisor, know something is going on with this person, because there are a ton of resources now. So now let's start building up this community, this amount of resource lists that we have, and then also breaking the stigma and having guys be courageous enough to put their hand up and get those resources. So thanks for letting me go off on that tangent. Before we close, Heather, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to talk about for yourself, for the foundation, for anything that you want to make sure and touch on? Or did we get to all the deep, dark corners of your life today that you weren't sure you totally wanted to expose? I also want to say I appreciate you letting me be intrusive, and I hope it was okay with our the way we asked and the story that you told. And I do want to say that I appreciate you coming on and being so open with us.
Absolutely. I think the most important message coming away from this is that ultimately, as firefighters, we have to be willing to, just like you said, be courageous enough to pick up the phone and say, I need help, or be courageous enough to go to a peer support person and say, I need some help. I'm struggling with A, B, or C. Or courageous enough to go to their spouse and say, I need some help. I'm struggling. I can't sleep. I am depressed. I am discouraged. I am frustrated. I am having trouble coping with whatever it is. We have resources, and the resources are certainly much more robust than they were 20 years ago, for sure. And that's because the issue is being recognized. And for that, I'm grateful. I don't know that it would have changed my circumstances necessarily. But the one thing I can certainly say, I'm grateful for my Ventura Fire family. This has been a journey, and I appreciate the fact that the whole fire family puts up with some of my crazy harebrained ideas, and we'll just have to hang on and see what comes up next.
That's a good question. What does the next 5 years look like for you?
Oh, good question. Well, gosh, I don't know. I think right now we're just trying to hang on. We actually are going to try and go after some grants to get to try and get a community program, a resource put together to kind of tackle our homelessness issue from a medical perspective. So I've been tasked with that, and I'm not sure what that's going to look like for me over the next year in particular. And I do know we are engaging in a very significant public education campaign over the next year in regard to educating the community on the importance of utilizing 911 correctly and our fire department resources correctly. So that also is going to be somewhat time consuming, but I think it will be a good thing. So I think it's going to be really helpful as well. So I'm looking forward to both projects, but I think they're going to keep me pretty busy as well.
No, I was talking more about what's Heather's 5 years.
I was going to interrupt and say, you asked her what was going on for her, and she immediately said, well, let me tell you how I'm going to make the boys' life better at work. So I thought that was very telling of who Heather is as a person.
Yeah, for me,
I appreciate that.
Gosh, I don't, well, I have my self-care is travel, in all honesty. It's travel. So we got a couple of trips coming up in the fall, and we'll be planning some more for next year. Maybe another European trip coming up. So, I mean, those are, for me, that's my adventurous side. So, yeah, that's where I'll be. I do have another grandbaby on the way, though.
Congrats.
Yeah, nice. Heather, if anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way?
Email for sure. hellis@cityofventura.ca.gov.
It's been an amazing episode. Lots of highs, lots of lows. I applaud your courage for coming on and sharing. I think we need more of this so people don't feel alone in some of their struggles, because I think that's a big part of the issue. But yeah.
And I'll just echo what Peter had to say. Thank you so much for being brave and coming on and telling your story. And in the long run, I think that just means you're out there letting people know, like Peter said, you're not alone, but also there's somebody to talk to if they need to, and you've been through it. So I think your story is going to actually be good for people to hear, and maybe somebody will contact you who's in need, as you have both sides of the issue. So thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Take care.
Well, that was heavy. That was a lot to take in. I knew Heather had a past. I just didn't know exactly what it all entailed. Sometimes you see people, but you don't really know their stories until you hear it.
Yeah, I definitely did not know her history either. I know her and her current husband have a great relationship, and and she's close to her kids too. That's kind of all I knew about her story. And she really stepped up and was wanting to tell her story to get it out there so people had somebody to relate to. She kept talking about two of the things that I wrote down: sleep and courage. Those were her two big messages for us. I like those takeaways. My tagline at work right now at the bottom of all my daily battalion chief emails is take care of each other. And I don't know what people translate that into, but for me, that means look out for each other and take care of yourself as well, with some of that self-care stuff that she's talking about. Recognize.
Yeah, I think she had an interesting perspective, being both similar to Amber Henderson, being both a spouse and a firefighter. I mean, her story was extreme. And I think that if we can prevent people from getting to that extremis, that would be huge. Yeah. Anyhow.
Well, keep subscribe and like and review our podcast. That helps bring it up in some of those venues. And have a good week, Peter. Thanks for the conversation.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Jason. Have a good one.